Andrew McCabe says President Trump's behavior in the early months of his presidency led the Deputy Attorney General to discuss whether he could be removed from office. In an interview with 60 Minutes, McCabe said Rod Rosenstein had even considered wearing a wire into the White House to secretly record the president.
President Trump fired back on Twitter this morning. He said McCabe's interview included so many lies and that he and Rod Rosenstein got caught planning a very illegal act. McCabe explained why talks about removing the president from office took place.
A discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort. I didn't have much to contribute, to be perfectly honest, in that conversation, so I listened to what he had to say. But to be fair, it was an unbelievably stressful time. I can't even describe for you how many things must have been coursing through the Deputy Attorney General's mind at that point. So it was really something that he kind of threw out in a very frenzied, chaotic conversation about where we were and what we needed to do next.
What seemed to be coursing through the mind of the Deputy Attorney General was getting rid of the President of the United States.
Well,
one way or another.
I can't confirm that, but what I can say is the Deputy Attorney General was definitely very concerned about the president, about his capacity, and about his intent at that point in time.
Rosenstein was actually openly talking about whether there was a majority of the cabinet who would vote to remove the president.
That's correct. Counting votes or possible votes.
Did he assign specific votes to specific people?
No, not that I recall.
As you're sitting in this meeting in the Justice Department talking about removing the President of the United States, you were thinking what?
How did I get here? Confronting these confounding legal issues of such immense importance, not just to the FBI, but to the entire country. It was disorienting.
So Rebecca Roiphe is a CBSN legal contributor. She's also a former assistant district attorney in New York County and joins us now. So there were all sorts of bombshells in this interview, but one of them had to do with Rod Rosenstein's memo, the memo that he wrote to justify the firing of FBI Director James Comey. And in it, he blamed the way Comey handled the Hillary Clinton investigation, which no one really bought completely. And now we're hearing from McCabe that the president specifically asked Rosenstein to include Russia in the memo. What sort of a bombshell is this? What does this mean?
I mean, that's huge news. First of all, the president himself already said that. He said that on an interview with Lester Holt, if you remember, shortly after the event, contradicting that memo from Rod Rosenstein. So right here, you have another piece of evidence that perhaps this was obstruction of justice. Now, we know that the Attorney General, now Bill Barr, believes that the president can't have obstructed justice in his firing of James Comey.
Right. Because he's James Comey's boss, so he should be able to fire him.
Yes, but, you know, a lot of other people think, whose opinion is less relevant, but still a lot of other people think that you can have a legal ability to do something, and if you do it with a corrupt intent, that's obstruction of justice. So I don't know, my guess, I don't know what Robert Mueller's theory is, but at least it's possible that this becomes another piece of evidence about his state of mind, which is, why are you firing everybody? Are you firing them, as Andrew McCabe said in that interview, because they are looking into you and your campaign? And if so, whether or not that's legally, criminally obstruction of justice, it is incredibly inappropriate. I mean, we can all agree on that, because the whole point is we have these independent agencies to do investigations so that the rule of law can prevail, that, you know, everybody is subject evenly to the law, and we don't have people in office who are behaving in a corrupt sort of way.
Yeah. So, Rebecca, McCabe also says that Rod Rosenstein brought up removing President Trump from office, invoking the 25th Amendment. I'm not a lawyer, but explain to our audience what is legally needed to invoke the 25th Amendment. I note that Lindsey Graham this weekend, who is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said he wants to investigate, and he used the word coup. Yeah. And if what the intelligence officials were worried about is President Trump's relationship with Russia, would that be high crimes and misdemeanors as noted in the Constitution?
Right. So the standard for removing somebody under the 25th Amendment is that the president can't fulfill his obligations as president. He's unable to function as president of the United States. So for sure, if he's an asset of the Russian government, or if there's some, sort of mental incapacity, that rightfully triggers the 25th Amendment. Now, whether we were factually at that point, one can debate. But it is a legal process. So I think calling it a coup is really inappropriate, because we have these constitutional provisions that are there for a reason. And they didn't actually do it. They just discussed it. So it seems like calling it a coup, I mean, it's undermining the Constitution. It's there for a reason, as an important check and an important way of protecting the American public. So whether it was appropriate to trigger it is very hard to know, because it hasn't been done before, so the legal standard is unclear.
McCabe says that he wrote memos about his conversations that he had with the president, and that now Robert Mueller has those memos. It reminds me of FBI Director James Comey saying that he wrote those notes contemporaneously because he was concerned about basically what turned out to happen, and that he got fired. Yeah. How important are these memos, and how much do you think they'll factor into the Mueller investigation anyway?
I think they're pretty important. I think that, first of all, FBI agents are trained to do that. That's, that's procedure. So it's perfectly normal that both of them would do it. Now, normally you don't feel like you have to do it, because you don't feel like you're going to become a witness when you're having a conversation with the president. But things are complicated, and things were complicated in this particular circumstance. So it doesn't seem at all weird that they did it. Those are good evidence, and they're now in the hands of Robert Mueller. Again, it goes to this question of obstruction of justice and what the special counsel's theory of obstruction of justice is. But those, it is important evidence, and I think very credible evidence about what happened at the time.
What questions would you have for Andrew McCabe?
So I'm curious about what happened with Comey, whether he's spoken to Comey after he left office, because that wasn't answered in the 60 Minutes interview. And I'm curious about their interaction and how they've sorted this out, because they had a basic disagreement about the fundamental question about when and why, sort of why he gave this information to the Wall Street Journal. And so I'd like to know whether the two of them, who I believe were close and trusted each other, how they've discussed it, if they have, after he's left the office, in order to figure out, did he lie, or was this just a misinterpretation that they both had of a particular conversation?
I think a lot of people still have a lot of questions out there. Hopefully we'll get some more answers.
Yes.
Rebecca Roiphe, thank you so much as always. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.